So good morning. Welcome to the final webinar in our Tennessee History Day Teaching with Primary Sources webinar series. Thank you guys so much for those of you who have been joining us for all these. And if this happens to be your first, we are going to tell you how you can go back and watch all of those. So this has been an exciting trying out some new things for us this summer. Usually Jennifer and I hit the road and do 6 workshops in the span of usually about 2 weeks. So again, this has been a little different, but hopefully it's been a good experience for everyone. So a few things to keep in mind for this session. Again, as you come in, your mics were muted. We do ask that you keep those muted. We are recording the session and we'll be posting that on our Teaching with Primary Sources MTSU YouTube page. So again, that just helps us have a clear recording for that posting. Also, again, if you will find your name in the participant list and rename yourself so we see your first and last name, that will help Hannah. She is keeping attendance during today's session. So definitely please go ahead and do that. And as always, we do want these sessions to be interactive. So if you would, go ahead and locate the chat box. If you've not already done so, we encourage you to introduce yourselves. So that way you kind of get a sense of who all is here with us today, what parts of the state are represented, and that way your colleagues can see everyone who's on here with us. You do have reaction buttons that you can use. Look at the bottom of your screen. There's also some new ones that I've got added. So you'll see those. I think those should be on the right-hand side in the participant boxes where mine are. I don't think we have any polling today, but that is something we do in some of our other sessions. So again, I do encourage you guys to make use of that chat box to interact with us. We will be responding to messages throughout the session. And as always, all of the resources for today's session, as well as all of our past sessions, are available on our Padlet. You have the QR code there so that you'll be able to access that, or you can use the web address. And Jennifer will, of course, include the link in the post session email that she'll send out later today. So again, that is a great place to go and find all of the resources from all of our sessions in this series. All right, and again, this is the last in this, but if you would, if you're interested, you can go back and watch any of our previous sessions on our YouTube page, and we do encourage you to do so. So today we are talking about National History Day as an extracurricular activity or as a classroom project, and I'm going to turn things over now to Jennifer, who's going to introduce some of our guest speakers for today.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for showing up for our last session. So today we have 3 guest speakers, all of whom have a lot of History Day and classroom experience. Becky Werner and Rita Parks are at Meg's Academic Magnet Middle School in Nashville and Davidson County. Becky teaches world history and Rita is the librarian there. Becky was, before she returned to the classroom, she was the curator of education at Tennessee State Museum. And she's been a teacher and instructional designer with Metro since 2004. She's been involved with teaching American history grants, and you might know her through her work with the Tennessee Council for History Education. She's co-chair of that conference every year. And she was this year's 2020 Tennessee History Day Teacher of the Year, which I think was very richly deserved because Meg's got hit by a tornado and she and Rita had to go in and salvage their classrooms and library. And we were out of school for about a week after the tornado hit, and then we closed because of the virus. So Rita and Becky have not been back to their school since they had to go clean it out. Rita's the librarian at Meg's Middle. She's been involved with oral history projects in the past, including digital mapping tools using public history and local history. So they're going to do their presentation together. Our next presentation is going to be led by Rebecca Bird, who teaches 8th grade history and 7th grade history at New Center Elementary, which is a K-8 school in Sevier County. She is teacher in residence at the East Tennessee Historical Society and a member of this Tennessee State Library and Archives Educator Working Group. She was the lead teacher on the most recent issue of the Tennessee Blue Book, which is geared for students. She was our 2018 Tennessee History Day Educator of the Year, and she also, through her work with Tennessee History Day or through National History Day, was selected along with one of her students to be part of the Normandy Sacrifice for Freedom Institute, where she and the student did research on a soldier who died at Normandy all year long. And then in the summer, they actually went to France to do more work on that project. So they all have a great deal of experience that they're going to be sharing with us. And I'm excited to find out some tips from them as well. So we're going to turn it over to Becky now, who I think is going to share her screen.
Yes. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I am going to pull up the PowerPoint, hopefully. And can everyone see that? Jennifer, can you see that?
Yes, looks good.
Excellent. Well, good morning. Like Jennifer said, Rita and I both teach at Meg's Magnet here in Nashville. We did have the double whammy this year, getting hit by the tornado on March 2nd. Schools were closed for a week. We had to frantically go in that Friday, pack up our classrooms so we could move to a totally brand new building to us. And we moved, we made it work. We were there for 2 days before they shut school down for COVID. So we've had a lot of challenges this year. So in other words, NHD is a classroom project, also known as What Were We Thinking? Rita and I have been working together on NHD since I came to Meg's in 2004. It has been a wonderful process, which starts with talking to the administration team. Now, I will tell you, I am the only 7th grade social studies teacher, so I have all 175 7th graders. So that's 6 classes. I see them every other day. So we're on an AB block schedule, and then I see all six classes on Friday. So that makes scheduling a little bit challenging, but you can do this. If we can do this on the AB block, you can try it as well. Just be flexible. You do not have to be perfect, because God knows we have not been perfect. But the first step is talking to your administrator, talking up National History Day. How will it benefit your students? In these days, you hear a lot of literacy, math, literacy, math. Well, the NHD program is nothing but applied or application of literacy tools. You can think of it as a literacy lab. A lot of rigor here, a lot of use of critical thinking, as you've seen this over this series with evaluating primary sources. It's definitely teaching life lessons, particularly on collaboration. Plus, it gives your students opportunities to compete at multiple levels, your school competition, regional, state, and national. So these life lessons, these literacy skills are definitely being put to good use in a real world setting. So if you can talk to your administration, get them on board, you will have lifelong supporters. Step 2, get to know your librarian. You can see, first thing I have up there, NHD as a class project cannot be done on your own. You have to have the support of your librarian. Thank God for Rita Parks, who can never ever retire and can never ever leave me. She has been wonderful. We plan together. We get on each other's calendars. In fact, I think tomorrow, Rita, that's the first thing we need to do after our meeting with Dr. Underwood, our principal tomorrow, finding out what our marching orders are for the year. But what is so great is that Rita is willing to take the risk right there along with me. It's okay to try something and then it not work, because that happens. That's reality. But learn from it, debrief about it. We are constantly debriefing. We're constantly having to be flexible. Things that we thought would be perfect, they didn't come out so great. So that's why we meet for a lot of happy hours. We do a lot of our debriefing there, a lot of quality time. And we also include some of the folks that we work with. They help us out too, including our encore teacher. People are flexible with schedules. If somebody needs to watch someone's class while I can run up and ask Rita a question or show her a resource or something. So flexibility all around. But get to know your librarian. This is Rita on the right, and this is me on the left. She is amazing. She is the expert in conducting research using those online resources. She's created annotating bib lessons. She conferences with me with different groups. She helps provide feedback, and she judges, and she grades their annotated bibliographies for me using the rubric. She is absolutely amazing, and now you know why she can never, ever retire. Step 3, pacing your projects. It's very important that you know on the front end where you're going with this. So the first step, which again, we'll be looking at tomorrow, is starting on a calendar. And we will start with the end date in mind. If you're familiar with PBL or backwards design planning, we're doing that same format. We start with the date we want the kids to present their project. So we do it a little bit differently on the school competition, because I do grade their presentation. It's more, they get it to provide me with an overview of their project first, and then the judges go in and start asking questions. But we have to have that calendar done at first, and then we plan backwards from there. We include times for students to turn in drafts of their process papers and annotated bibliographies. And on these drafts, they do not get grades. They do get written feedback from us. And we look to see that they make the changes, address those suggestions that we've given them in those drafts. Then they get a grade on their final draft of each of those pieces. The research component, very important. We build in multiple library research days. We build in days for how do you do research? That is a lesson. There is another lesson that's how do you create an annotated bibliography? That is a different lesson. So we make sure we include enough coverage for that to prepare the kids so they don't feel like they have been thrown into the deep end of the pool. Providing feedback, we conference. This year, I think we conferenced twice with them during the process with every group. I think this year we might try to add a third day. The kids in their reflections said that was very valuable and helpful for them. But this is to discuss where they are in the process, what kind of sources they've used, what questions do they have, what problems have they encountered, are they okay working together? And then when we're pacing our projects, we also work in work days where there's days in the classroom that they're doing nothing but NHD research or either putting their projects together. That is absolutely essential. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rita.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to talk for just a little bit about some of the components that I think are really necessary and important as I'm getting the kids in classroom situations with Becky and small groups with any combination of students working together. I usually start out with a research review with our fifth graders when they come in, because we have fifth graders in middle school in MNPS. I start having them look at what research really is. Research is more than just sitting at a computer keyboard and typing a question into Google. And so each year I build on these research lessons. So we do a little quick review to I want them to be reminded of how important it is to step outside the box in thinking of what your thesis or research question is. I cover a primary and secondary source lesson that is usually built on something they've already been exposed to in 5th and 6th grade. I have a separate day where we look at research tools and all of the tools within the web pages, the databases, books, whatever they happen to be using, to find all the information they need, how to save those into their own accounts, how to share them with their team members. So lots of just hands-on, and this is when I have found with 7th graders, with our students, they really become interested because then they can sink their teeth into a source that can help them find information. Well, I segue from that into citing sources. Yes, we love databases because they provide the MLA citation for us. But also, when you don't have that gift of the provided citation, how do you find the information you need? I also cover plagiarism, then apply all of that to the annotated bibliography. I have them turn their bibliographies into me and I grade them. It's pretty extensive process because some kids can have 2 pages of sources and then some kids will have 20. But I think it's really important that they have someone looking at each and every entry so they know what they've written on that paper. YouTube has become ubiquitous for students to use as a source. And so not that those sources are bad, but knowing how to dig deeper and look for where did that originally come from. So it's all just steps in the process. And also the very last block there, making sure that they're sharing documents with each other most of our kids are on top of that because they're accustomed to doing that now. If Becky will click on the Library LibGuide title, that should take us to a LibGuide that, click it again, dear.
Do you not see it on your screen?
No, it's not.
Becky, if it's opening in a different application, you'll need to go to share screen again and open up that particular document.
Bear with me, folks.
But what I do with the LibGuide is she's getting that up, and or you could open it on the Padlet that you have. It's on there as well.
Yeah, keep talking, Rita. I'm trying to get to it.
I tweak that every year. This is sort of the foundation that I have for this year, anticipating the new content that we're going to be looking at and covering with this new theme. So I always put in the LibGuide, I usually have 2 links. This is just the resources link that you will see. But I have the research review, Prezi, the lesson that I use with the students to just remind them of what's important, things to consider when they're conducting research. I have a primary sources LibGuide that I've embedded in this LibGuide just to do a brief review as well. And honestly, I still have a Portal. If any of you remember Portal, raise your hand. You may still be using Portal, but I have some links in Portal that the kids can go to as well. Then I encourage them to look for books. In Metro Davidson County, we have the relationship with Limitless Libraries, which is wonderful, so that if I can't have all the books in the library that they may need to access in order to do their research, so they can request from Limitless Libraries, or we can go further in making requests for books. And I tell the kids to get to those books as quickly as possible, to check that frequently, because Becky is teaching world history in 7th grade, there aren't a huge amount of resources for some of the topics. So I am always asking them to just go straight to the books first, just to see what's there. Then I make recommendations for databases. I pulled some out that that are good for world history resources. And then I curate a list of primary sources, and thank you all at MTSU. I've put yours first and foremost for primary sources on the web for images and text. Then I pull out the Library of Congress with a lot of information about how to look for information in the Library of Congress, especially for world history sources. I have another separate section for developing citations. And there we go.
Kira, thank you. I couldn't get it to work on my end.
Yeah. So in the middle, MLA citations, this is a required format. Lots of links on how to do it. My review lesson, which is a Powtoon and a PowerPoint. It's a cute little MLA 8 Powtoon. The MLA template, yes. And so I'm not going to ask you to open any of these links because we don't have enough time. But in my opinion, Al Purdue is the absolute best reference source for kids when they're learning how to do ML8 citations. So I put several links in there. I want this LibGuide to be their reference for all things MLA8 and NHD, to answer their questions when they're at home, especially more important now due to our remote learning. Okay, and down, keep going down. Yes, a couple of years ago, I was, maybe we had a snow day, I cannot remember, but I just started citing things in my house. And so I came up with an annotated bibliography example to show the kids. I have to constantly remind myself that these wonderful students are 12, 13, and you can give this to them on a silver platter, and I think we all know this, but I still have to remind them, did you look at that example? Did you look at the checklist? Then when the light bulb comes on, it's just fabulous for all of us. So I want this to be the reference point for all of them. Metro Schools does subscribe to Noodle Tools, and so that's the last reminder link I have for the kids there. My language arts teachers really want the kids, 7th and 8th grade language arts teachers, pretty much want them to know what they're looking for when citing sources. And so that's why I take pains to teach them how to find this information, because a bibliography with an online tool is just as good as what you put in it. And so, you know, they really have to know what they're looking for, and then let Noodle Tools help them with the format and the organization. Okay, and then up at the top on the far right side, a few, under my 5-year-old picture, if you'll scroll down, some more websites that I kind of in general direct kids to, but this I will build on this year as we begin to search for sources from 500 to 1500 that relate to the topic this year for NHD. So these are some general ones under websites, but I will just keep adding to those as we find good sources for the kids. And then always some Google search hints. It's, you know, you don't just ask Google a question and want it to think for you. So that's what I do. It's a fabulous process. I love working with our students on, and with Becky, you know, sounds like, you know, we're each other's greatest support system, but I am so grateful that she has taken this on. We've done it at Meg's before, and it's been a fabulous process all the way through before she came back to us. I want the kids to get comfortable stepping away from Google. I want them to build on their research skills year after year. I want them to learn how to navigate new sources and how to navigate anything beyond what they're accustomed to, and to become more scholarly. And it's an evolution, I think, for all of us, because kids will start out with, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. And I would say 75 to 80% of all of them always will say to us, I learned so much. I loved this. This was so great, because they have taken ownership of their project, their learning, and most of them really rise to the occasion. So it's a great process. And also Becky lives at school. So I don't know if we want Becky to always live at school. But okay, I think that's it.
Okay, so I will see if I can't pull the PowerPoint back up. Y'all have to bear with me, I apologize. Share screen. PowerPoint, here we go. Can everyone see that? Current slide. Okay, so step 4, if you cannot see step 4, communicate expectations, please let me know. But it's very important from the get-go that you are communicating with students and parents. Send that letter home describing the sales pitch, why your kids are doing NHD, because a lot of times it might be more of a complex project for them than what they've experienced before, particularly those that are coming from 5th and 6th grade. Make sure that you provide the calendar for the project that has the final due date, those conference dates, the lessons. I provide that with the students, and it is posted on the Padlet. This project packet also has the guidelines, the rubrics. The kids are provided at least one paper copy of their own, every student is, for them to keep in their folders. I also will I provide it multiple times electronically. So I need to stay on top of communicating, because the kids will try to say, well, I never knew this. And then I'll say, well, look back in your packet on page 4. This is where we talked about this in class. So make sure you provide communication multiple times, repeatedly. Have copies of those same materials available in your classroom, because kids tend to lose things sometimes, right? So I have a folder, a center in my room, where I have copies of the guidelines, of the rubrics, the rule books, the how to create project guides offered by NHD. That is located in a central center in my classroom. I will also be providing that electronically online this year, since it looks like we will be virtual for a little bit, and encourage students to ask questions when they don't understand. A lot of times they don't ask questions because they don't want their classmates to know that they don't understand something. So try to provide multiple avenues. I had a box in my room that had NHD ? Written on it, where kids could anonymously write a question on an index card, slip it in there, or they could welcome to write it on a Post-it note and slip it to me. And that way, it's kind of like a parking lot. And then I would be able to address those questions one-on-one and to the entire class, because if one child has that question, chances are there's more than one that will have that same question. Next step, grading projects. Now here you can see I've got a side-by-side comparison. On the left shows how we've been doing it for the past few years. Pre-pandemic, because I am the only social studies teacher and I want to try to maintain my sanity, I required students to do group projects. There's no way I could grade 175 individual projects because they were worth 4 grades each. You can see I took a grade on process paper, annotated bibs, the presentation of the project, and then they get a peer evaluation grade. Again, make sure you provide the families and the students with those rubrics so they know exactly what those expectations are on the front end. Now on the right side of your screen, you can see what I'm looking at, what Rita and I are thinking about for doing this year, particularly if we're going to be in virtual school. Right now, we're in virtual school at least until September. Don't know if that's going to continue. So with that in mind, I'm considering, because we have to maintain social distancing here in Nashville, we've gone back into phase 2. So getting kids together to work on group projects, that's going to be an obstacle. So I'm considering having groups work in only pairs. It's easier for 2 kids to get together safely. If I limit them to only the electronic projects, and we haven't decided on this. This is something we're thinking about. But considering to have groups of 2 to 5, but only within the website and documentary categories, because they can work on those at their own workspaces in their homes and collaborate on them together electronically, where it's going to be more difficult to collaborate in person safely on a performance or an exhibit. So that's something we're thinking about. And of course, individual projects for students with IEPs, that should also be on the left-hand side of your screen. This past year, Rita, I think we had 2 students that ended up, because of we had one that, well, they might have both had special needs that warranted them doing their own projects. They started off working together, but their collaboration skills left a little bit to be desired. So we allowed them to do the individual projects. And then we will use the same grading categories for the virtual projects as we do on the left. So that's the process paper, the annotated bib, the presentation, and the peer evaluation. So we hopefully will be able to jump into have a little bit more idea after meeting with our administrators tomorrow. Step 6, forming groups. I should emphasize that I do not put the groups together. the kids create their own groups. And this is probably one of the strongest life lessons that they learn through this process. So we start off by discussing what are the benefits, what are the drawbacks of working in groups. Then we talk about, well, what would you like to have in a group member? So they have to consider their own strengths and skills, and they think about what they need to complement their strengths and skills. And they rank what they are looking for in a group. They can add some traits to this list, and this is on the Padlet, the Forming Groups worksheet. They can add traits onto that form that might not be included. Then they conduct interviews. They actually go through a round-robin interview process where they get to interact with the other classmates, some that they have never even met before, that they might be new to the school or they just haven't really interacted with. So they are forming their own groups. And as you can see this year, if we're virtual, we will be doing this through breakout rooms, yet another piece of technology that I'm really going to have to practice with. And then finally, the students create their own groups. After they've gone through their interviews and they've evaluated them, I tell them, it takes about a class and a half, 1.5 class periods for the interview process. And this gives them a chance to interview 9, 10 kids. Then I have them silently move into what you think you want your group to be. So they are silently moving, creating groups. It's really amazing to watch. And then one of the first things they have to do when they're working in those groups, they have to come up with a group contract. They have to establish group norms, absolutely necessary. And they must include how they're going to work out their disagreements. And I'm only going to get involved, Rita's only going to get involved as a last resort. We are mediators. And then we have them, we refer to those contracts while we're conferencing with them. And we'll ask, well, how are things going? Have you hadn't run into any problems? How did you work them out? So we are reinforcing collaboration skills like you would not believe. Here we are conducting interviews. Yes, we repeatedly tell them not to work with their friends because they might not be friends by the end of the NHD process. I even have letters from the previous 7th graders, and one section is advice for doing NHD. And one of the very first things that you always see in those letters is don't work with your friends. Don't work with your best friends, because it does get tense. Some of the kids don't believe us. We had one group this past year that didn't believe us, and it did not turn out very well for them. But encourage them to take the interview seriously. They've done a really beautiful job with it. You can see they have their interview forms on their clipboards, and they go around the room and they interview for about 1.5 class periods. Next step is connecting project ideas to the curriculum. Once they have formed their groups and they have their contracts in place, we give them copies of the 7th grade curriculum standards for the entire year. Now, 7th grade history is world history from the year 500 AD to 1500 AD. So we're already facing a big challenge with National History Day, because you don't have all the cool photographs and the editorial cartoons and all that. So they're going to have to pick a project that they feel they can access, find, get their hands on good primary sources. So we have them go through the curriculum standards. They annotate or circling keywords that they don't know or things they have questions about. We want each member of the group to come up with 3 ideas in which they're interested. Then they share those 3 ideas with the rest of their group. Then they all work together, narrow all those different ideas down to 3, and then they vote. And we remind them that you're going to be married to this topic possibly for an entire year, especially if they go on to compete in nationals. So you want to make sure you have a topic that's going to be able to maintain your interest, something you want to continue to explore and learn about. And once they have chosen that topic, they complete a topic proposal form and turn it in, and we discuss this during their first group conference. And the topic proposal form is also included on the Padlet. The school contest, again, this is done a little bit differently it looks a little bit different than what it does at regionals and state competition. because I can't have the kids all day long. I can't pull them out of all of their classes. So they are formally presenting their projects to me and at least 3 other judges. And the area museums here in Nashville and around Middle Tennessee, the historical organizations, university professors, they have been so generous with their time and their support coming in. I create a sign-up genius that has the dates and specific times. They're only an hour and a half at the longest, hour and 15 minutes, that they'll come. And during that time, they're judging 4, maybe 5 projects during that time slot. Don't forget to ask your administrators. You want them to see the results, the fruits of their labor and their support of your doing the NHD in your classroom. Ask your coaches, district coordinators. I am not afraid to ask even Dr. Battle, our superintendent, to come in. I want her to see what these kids are doing because the kids have worked hard. Just make sure you provide your judges with the NHD rubrics, evaluation forms, at least 2 weeks in advance so they can have an opportunity to go review them. Also give them, provide them with the sample judges questions in advance. Also provide copies of these materials the day they are in judging. And make sure you have those snacks, cookies, water, muffins, big hits. And then while the groups are presenting their projects, hold the rest of the class accountable. I have them do a 3-2-1 form, which I don't have a copy of it completed. It's at school and I can't get into school. They're still doing repairs from the tornado. But 3-2-1, provide 3 things. What 3 things did you like about this group's project? What 2 questions do you still have? What one suggestion do you have for improvement? And then these 3-2-1 forms are shared with the project groups. They get to see their peers' feedback on their projects, which I think has been very helpful. And then here we have some pictures of our students. Look at these happy faces. So these are some of the kids who competed at regionals. The group on the left here, this obviously is an all-male group, but they did a performance on Joan of Arc and they did a phenomenal job. Here on the right is a telescope, Galileo's telescope group that did a website. You can see they are dressed for success. Again, happy faces on the left. We have a project that went on to compete at nationals. This was the Navajo Code Talkers here, these ladies. On the right, we have another performance on the Spanish Inquisition. And you can see the seriousness on the face there, but they had a ball. Some more projects. This project here was a documentary on the Magna Carta. This was an individual paper on Nellie Bly. She doesn't look too happy in that picture. She placed 3rd at regionals out of 3 projects, so she was really disappointed that she was actually alternate, but she ended up going to compete at state because one of their finishers was not able to compete at the state level. She went on to compete at nationals. So don't let your kids get discouraged. They might place totally higher and blow the competition away at the different levels of competition. These are all the ones who went on to place at regionals and competed at the state competition. We had, I think, Rita, 72 kids compete at the state regional competition, which was 19 projects. And of those 19 projects, 8 went on to compete at state, and from state, 3 projects went on to compete at nationals. And that was the first time, I believe, that Megs has sent students to nationals. And of these kids that you see on the screen right now, they will be 8th graders this year. Just about all of these kids have already planned to do National History Day again. I also do National History Day for 8th graders as a club, as a club that meets twice a week. And so they are super excited about competing again. So if you do have any questions, I know that we've probably gone over time. I do apologize for that. All the forms that I referenced are located on the Padlet. You'll find the LibGuide there. You'll find the guidelines and rubrics that we used for this past year. Waiting to do the ones for 2021 after we talk to our administrators tomorrow. I have the forming groups worksheet. I have the reflection, the NHD reflection sheet. It's always important to get feedback from the kids. You always want to find out what worked well during the NHD process that year, what needs to be tweaked. That's all part of taking that responsible risk on behalf of the teachers taking responsible risk. We want to model that for our kids. Just encourage the kids to be honest, but be kind. And if you have any questions, please, please, please feel free to contact us. We are more than willing to share lessons learned and even collaborate with you. What ideas do you have? So on that note, I will try to stop the share. And there we go. Thank you. Rita, did you have any comments you wanted to add?
No, just the point about having this year, one of the changes was expanding the conferencing. And I was hands-on with that this year, as well as our AART teacher and Becky. And that accountability in a smaller group with each group was, I think, really valuable. It was valuable to me. As Becky says, you know, I learn something new every year too. And also having the kids look at the standards, to hear them refer to, but you know, in that standard, it increased their ability to connect to it and feel that ownership, I think, as well. So it's a great process. It's a lot of work, but it is a great process from beginning to end. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone wants to email me. Be happy to do that, and hear other ideas as well.
Because I think Rebecca is up next.
Yes, correct. Rebecca,
Hi,
if you want to go ahead and share your screen, we'll just move right on to Rebecca.
Okay, let's see if I can get this going. All right, so as Jennifer said in her lovely introduction earlier, I do teach at Sevier County Schools, and my email is on this first slide, so please feel free to contact me. As we're going through this, if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat box, and I'm sure Kira or Jennifer or somebody will be glad to let me know as we go along. So if you're looking to do NHD as a club, the first thing you want to think about is your logistics. And so one thing you want to consider is your own time. How much time can you realistically devote to this club on top of, you know, the responsibilities you already have at school and home? You want to think about when and where you're going to meet, how often you will meet, how long your meetings will last. 2 hours is usually about the sweet spot for that, especially if you're meeting after school, because the kids are kind of tired from the school day anyway. So my club meets from 3:15 to 5:15. What equipment and supplies you're going to have available for the students, or what they're going to be responsible for. So my school, for example, we have purchased the cardboard NHD exhibit boards. So if the kids want to use that, that's something I have for them. But if they want to do like a wooden board, they purchase the supplies for that, and they, you know, construct that with help from their families themselves. You want to think about what are your expectations for your participants, because this isn't something they're getting a grade for. So what do you expect in terms of their work and also just their behavior when they're meeting? And then who do you need to get permission from? So I'm actually lucky at my school. We have a 21st Century Classroom grant program that sponsors a whole after school program, and my history club is part of that. So I'm kind of under that umbrella. But if you're doing this completely independently, you want to think about, you know, who needs to sign off on this. So as Becky mentioned, one really important thing is to communicate your expectations as well as student progress to your students and to their parents and guardians, so there aren't any surprises. Normally, most of my kids complete a project and move on to our regional competition. But, you know, sometimes I have students that the work is not quite up to par. And so I've had to say to them, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not taking you to this level of competition because you haven't met this expectation. So you just want to make sure that's clear to everybody as you go. And then another thing, if you're doing this as a club, is look for individuals or community groups who might want to sponsor you. Several years ago, I had a student who did a documentary on Pi Beta Phi Elementary School, which is in Gatlinburg, and she actually went on to national competition, and she presented her documentary to the Gatlinburg Chamber of Commerce, and they actually helped to pay her registration fees and some of the expenses to go to national competition. So you can build some community relationships there to help with some of the funding. Once you've got all of your logistics worked out, you want to think about recruiting people to join your club. So how are you going to let people know that you're doing this? I've done emails, flyers in the hallway, in-class announcements. Another thing to think about is, are you only opening this up to students you teach, or are you going to have other students as well? So I teach 7th and 8th graders, but I invite 6th graders as well. So I usually have to work with the 6th grade teachers to kind of get those announcements out and try to help me figure out some kids that I might want to particularly invite. So I would say one of the most important things if you're going to do NHD as a club is to recruit kids who love history, not just the kids who make A's. Honor students are great and awesome, and they do some amazing projects, but I always feel like middle schoolers and high schoolers, they really need a group. They need a place to shine. And so some kids kind of, you know, they have a hard time finding that. They're maybe not athletic, or they're not going to have the highest GPA. And so this can be a place to really bring kids in who have passion and creativity and let them express that. So I look for the people who love history. And then personally invite the students that you would like to participate. If there's somebody that you think would just really be good at this, you know, go to that student and say, hey, I want you to do this, and this is why I think you would be great at, and this is why I think you would love it. Because sometimes even if they decide not to participate, I think it means a lot to them to get that personal invitation. So once you have your club set up and you have your students recruited, I think it's really important to help guide their topic choice. That was something that we were kind of discussing in the chat box as Becky was speaking earlier about what kind of topics to choose. So I like to start off by looking at the theme. This year's theme is communication and history, and just coming up with a list of stuff that comes to my mind about what was going to be a good fit. And then also think about the students, you know, what are they interested in? What are their passions? Try to come up with some things that appeal to that. Another great place to look is Jennifer and her staff always do an amazing job coming up with Tennessee related topics. And you can find those on the website. She's kind of included the image there for me at the bottom. Don't be afraid to look back at previous year topics, because even though the theme was different in, say, 2014 than this year's theme, a lot of times an idea could be tweaked that would still really work well with a different theme. So that's a great jumping off spot. You also want to make sure you're utilizing like libraries and local historical societies to help you find local topics. Very often, some of the most successful projects take a local history topic that students are then able to show its relationship with the bigger themes of U.S. history. So one of my sort of highest ranking projects ever was a high school project. It was a group exhibit on the civil rights movement in Knoxville. And then I've already mentioned the project on Pi Beta Phi Elementary School. Tennessee had a national winner a few years ago when Emma Grace Thompson did a documentary on, it's called Rough in the Bunch. It's about a strike of female workers in Elizabethton. So those kind of topics can really resonate as you move on in levels of competition. Another tip, if you're working with high schoolers, because I teach middle school, but I have high schoolers that are part of my history club as well, is sometimes we try to look at topics that can do double duty, because high schoolers are looking at scholarship applications and college essays. So this year, for example, two of my girls that are in the picture, they did their NHD project on women's suffrage. And then they were also able to take
the research they had done for that, and then enter the scholarship competition that the state suffrage organization was put out for them. So sometimes you can kind of double duty a little bit, which is great for the high schoolers. Organization and time management is really important. And a lot of the things that I would say here are kind of similar to what Becky said if you're doing this in the classroom as well. So you want to think about when are the projects going to need to be completed for your local competition, a school level competition. I think we have sub-regional as well as regional. And this year, I mean, I don't think any of us know how school is going to go. I don't think anybody knows how competition season is going to go. I'm going to try to push my kids to be done sooner than I have in the past, just because I feel like that might be important to give ourselves a little bit more of a cushion of time in there in case we have, you know, unexpected periods out of school again. Think about how you can chunk the process for your students so they have that clear idea of what they need to be working on at any given time. How are you going to assess their progress? The rubrics are really great for this. I'm pretty excited about the revamped rubrics. I think they're going to be so much more helpful for me in giving the kids feedback, but also for the students themselves to improve their projects. And then how are they going to organize their research and materials? I love Noodle Tools. I know Rita mentioned this. We do not, unfortunately, my county does not pay for subscriptions for this, but it's actually very inexpensive. I think an individual account is like $20, $25. So this could be something that you collect a fee. You know, it's a club. I think it's reasonable that you might have a fee that students pay to be part of it. And you can tell them you're using that money for Noodle Tools subscription. This could also be something that you just tell students, parents, like, hey, this is something that would be your responsibility to get. Again, it's pretty reasonable. If you have siblings, with one Noodle Tools account, you can have multiple projects. So when I've had siblings before, they've had one account and they just had their own individual projects within that one account. So that's a little bit of a money savings as well. But Noodle Tools is my favorite for annotated bibliography because, as Rita mentioned, it does like the formatting work for them, but they still have to get that information. So they're still learning how to really do a good annotated bibliography. It also has some excellent features for helping them take notes and understanding the difference between taking a note and perhaps unintentionally plagiarizing. So it gives them some good guidance on that as well. So I'm a big fan of Noodle Tools for NHD. Another thing you want to make sure you do is give them a timeline or a calendar with the key dates. I included an old sample one in the Padlet so you guys can kind of take a look at it. I have our meeting dates in the left-hand column. And then the one I included was a year that I had exhibits and website only. So I kind of gave the students in those different categories a breakdown of what they needed to be doing on any given day. So it's great for the students because they know what they need to be working on. It's really nice for me. Occasionally I will need to be absent on one of our club meeting days, and I try really hard not to cancel because I think they need to be in the habit of being there, but also they need that time to work. So usually I've been able to find another teacher who's willing to sub in for me. And so it's really nice that I can say, hey, you don't really have to worry about anything. They know exactly what they're going to work on. And then another suggestion is definitely use digital collaboration tools. My district is all about Chromebooks and Google. So we have Chromebooks for everybody in 3rd through 12th grade, I think now. And so this has been a huge lifesaver, not only this year with getting out of school due to coronavirus, but here in East Tennessee, we get a lot of snow days. And so oftentimes our snow days fall in January and February when especially exhibit kids are kind of hard at work getting projects completed. So what we've started doing is really using Google Slides to create captions and also to put our images in that we're going to use on the exhibit boards, using Google Docs for process paper, because that allows me to very easily go in and give the students feedback. If it's a group project, they can easily work on it, in real time together. So that's been a huge game changer for us to have those digital collaboration tools. So that's really the gist of History Day as a club. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. So I'm going to see if I can stop my screen share. Hey, anybody have any questions? All right, well, Jennifer, I will pass it back over to you then.
All right, well, thank you to all of our, oh, I hear a really bad echo for me. Hold on a second, let me see if I can.
It seemed to be better there at the end, Jennifer.
Pardon?
It's better now.
Okay, all right, I switched something and it works better now. So thanks to all of our awesome presenters today for making my job easy. And there were a couple points that I saw in the chat that I wanted to go over real quickly. First of all, there's a concern about standardized testing and tying this and convincing your administration that you are making good use of your class time. And we do have a survey that National History Day commissioned where they went to 4 different districts and they looked at districts that were doing History Day, they looked at districts that were not, and they looked at districts that were in the process of adopting History Day. And not surprisingly, after surveying all of them, they found that those students who did History Day had increases in their test scores. So it's a correlation, maybe not a causation, but there is an official survey out there. I put the link into the chat for you. I can also email you that link as well. I want you all to think of this year as an opportunity. This is actually a good year to dive into History Day because it's chaos and it's possible that testing may not be as emphasized as it has been in the past. And you may have a little bit of wiggle room in your curriculum to do more unusual things. The next thing I want to emphasize is that your National History Day program, whether it's a club or a class, should be a first semester project. We are committing to having a contest this year at all levels, so district, regional, state, and national. What that's going to look like, we don't know, but we are planning as if it will have to be virtual, which moves all the deadlines up a little bit because we will be requiring virtual submissions of the projects. So in terms of your planning, you want to have the bulk of the work done before winter break, and then that gives you January to fine tune and to get yourself into the registration system. All student projects for the regional contests will be due February 1st in their entirety. So that includes, for those of you who've done this before, exhibit and performance students who actually in the past could continue to work on their projects up until the day of. Now, everything is going to be due February 1st. There was some conversation about topic selection and how you tie it to the curriculum, and are world history students at a disadvantage? And they are, because there is this emphasis on primary sources. I really like Becky's idea of giving the students the actual curriculum to look at and using that as brainstorming for their topic selection. The point of History Day is learning the methodology of research. The contest part of it is extra. The contest part of it is the hook that you get kids involved with. Most of our students across the state, we have about 8,000 participating, are not going to be participating at the regional or state level. So their participation ends in the classroom. So if you need to tie those topics to what you're doing to show, okay, we've covered this topic, we've covered this topic, we've covered this topic, then do that. If, like Rebecca, you are able to give the kids free rein to pick topics of their own selection, you can do that as well. If it's your first year, I recommend that you sit down and you look at the topics fairly carefully and maybe do some pre-selecting. Maybe find things that you know there are sources out there. And as Kara pointed out in the chat, Stacy did a really good job in her webinar of showing world history sources for you. When you do your survey, your follow-up survey today, we have added a question asking for people who would be willing to be section leaders in future webinars. So when we break up into small groups, we're looking for people who want to help us manage those small groups. So that's a new question on the survey for you to answer today. And I don't have anything else other than thank you all for participating with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Kira. She's going to tell you about some upcoming attractions.
Yes, so we are going to be launching a series with our Discover Tennessee History Initiative that will begin in September. Some of you guys may have attended our conference that happened in June of 2019. Of course, we had to cancel that for this year, but we are looking at doing a webinar series that will be a monthly series. The registration for this hasn't opened just yet, but I wanted to give you guys kind of a little sneak peek at what we're going to be doing. So on the second Tuesday of each month, at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do a webinar about 1 hour. And each month we'll have a different organization presenting. So the first one is going to be Tennessee History Day. So if you have colleagues who are not familiar with History Day, but you think could benefit from this, this is going to be a great opportunity for them to learn more about Tennessee History Day. We are going to have the Abraham Lincoln Library and Museum presenting in October. Tennessee State Library and Archives will be presenting in November. The Tennessee State Museum will be presenting in December. The East Tennessee Historical Society will present in January. And then February will be State Parks. And then our Teaching with Primary Sources program will round out the series in March. So again, this is going to be a new thing that will start for the fall semester and will bleed over into the winter semester as well. So definitely be looking for that, share information with your colleagues about that. And just like with our other things, if something happens and you can't attend live, we will be recording these and posting these on our YouTube page so folks can watch them after the fact as well. And with that, I want to just again remind you guys that oh wait, that's not the one I wanted. There it is. All right, so again, that you have the chance to go back and watch or review any of the previous webinars in this series on our YouTube page, and we do encourage you to do so. We're also going to be adding some videos from some of our other June workshops and early July workshops that I've not got up yet. We'll be adding that in the next couple of weeks. So there's a lot of great materials on that YouTube channel that you can share. And as Jennifer mentioned, we do again have a short survey. Someone will post the link there in the chat box now. And then, of course, Jennifer will be emailing that out to you here shortly. So if you want to wait till you get the email to fill it out, then you can do so. We really appreciate your feedback and your participation in this webinar series. It's been very helpful for us to kind of have great participation both in the chat box and hearing from you all about what it is that is helpful for you, what questions that you have. And as we think about how planning is going to be going for the fall, you know, we are also looking at trying some new things. So if you have suggestions for topics, for resources, anything like that, either specifically for our Teaching with Primary Sources program, for the Tennessee History Day program, or for things that we might do jointly, definitely let us know. We'd love to hear from you and want to know what we can do to help make your lives just a little bit easier during these stressful times. So with that, again, I want to thank you guys for your participation, and we look forward to talking with you guys again very soon.